There was once a small forgotten village tucked deep within a forest of whispering trees and thick morning mist. The villagers called it Shadow Hill, and for generations, it had been a place of peace, where stories were passed down by firelight, and life moved with the rhythm of harvests and festivals. But everything changed one fateful night. It started with strange disappearances. Livestock were found drained of blood. Then people, one by one, vanished without a trace. A pale, unnatural fog began creeping into the village each evening, thicker than any mist they had ever known. With it came the howls of something inhuman. It didn't take long before whispers turned into certainty. A vampire haunted Shadow Hill. Each night it returned, and each night someone was taken. The villagers were desperate. They sought help from their elders, summoned priests and hunters, even turned to those who practiced forbidden magic from distant lands. But the creature was cunning, ancient and unseen. None could track it. None could stop it. Fear turned the cheerful village into a prison of silence and locked doors. Candles burned till morning. No one dared leave their homes after dusk. No one, except Ethan. He was a young man, just barely out of boyhood, who had lost everything to the creature. His parents, his sister, his peace. Orphaned and burning with grief, Ethan made a vow. If no one else would face the nightmare, he would. Despite the villagers' pleas, Ethan left one moonless night, carrying only a silver dagger passed down from his grandfather and a heart hardened by pain. He returned to the clearing where his sister had vanished just weeks before, and waited. The vampire came. It was a shadow of death, tall, twisted, with glowing eyes like dying embers. Ethan fought with every ounce of his strength, slashing, ducking, shouting in fury. For a fleeting moment it seemed he might have the upper hand. But the vampire was too fast, too strong. His fangs sank into Ethan's neck. He screamed, not in fear, but in defiance, and drove the silver dagger into the monster's heart. The creature howled in pain and vanished into the mist, leaving Ethan bleeding, shaking, and forever changed. The bite didn't kill him, transformed him. From that night on, Ethan was no longer entirely human. His senses sharpened. His strength grew, but deep inside, something dark stirred, something he could feel in his bones, whispering to him in the dead of night. The beast. Terrified of what he might become, Ethan left the village. Without a word, he disappeared into the mountains, living in self-imposed exile for a year. He trained his body, his mind, and battled the darkness inside him. Every day a fight against rage, hunger, and bloodlust. But something was coming. He could feel it. The vampire he had wounded had not died. It had only retreated. And now it was growing stronger. This time, it wouldn't be alone. As the second year approached, the skies above Shadow Hill began to darken once more. The fog returned. Villagers whispered of glowing red eyes among the trees. And far away, standing on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the village below, Ethan opened his eyes, burning crimson, and whispered, "It's time." The night Ethan vanished, the villagers assumed the worst. When the fog finally lifted and the night fell silent, they found the clearing where he had made his stand. Blood stained the ground. His silver dagger lay shattered in two. But of Ethan himself there was nothing. No body, no tracks, no trace. They mourned him as a hero, the boy brave enough to face a demon. Weeks passed, then months. A year slipped by. The attacks didn't stop, but they slowed. Something had shifted. People still heard the vampire's haunting screech in the dark, but now there was another sound too. A clash of battle. Snarls. Roars. The whistle of blades slicing through the air. It echoed from deep within the forest, just beyond the village's edge. No one dared to search for the source. All they knew was that something or someone was fighting the monster back. And strangely, more villagers were surviving the attacks. Some came back wounded, dazed, but alive. No one could explain it. It became a whisper in the dark, passed from one terrified soul to the next. Something is protecting us from the shadows. What they didn't know was that Ethan was still alive. Every night, he returned to the forest's edge, cloaked in darkness, hidden beneath thick brush, waiting for the vampire to strike. And every night he fought it. Sometimes he drove it back. Sometimes he barely made it through. The creature had changed, grown darker, crueler. And Ethan knew, in his bones, that it was no longer just a vampire. Something far more ancient and malevolent had taken hold. But Ethan carried a curse of his own. Whenever he smelled blood, especially human blood, the thing inside him stirred. His hands would tremble. His pulse would spike. Fangs would push past his lips. And in those moments, when he looked at the people he had sworn to protect, he felt the hunger. That was why he never returned to the village. He couldn't let them see what he had become. Because now, Ethan was more than their unseen guardian. He was also their potential predator. So he fought in secret, hid in silence, suffered in solitude, until one night, beneath a crimson moon, a strange scent drifted through the air. One Ethan had never sensed before. It wasn't the vampire. Something else had arrived. Ethan froze, his breath caught in his throat. From the heart of the forest, a deep, guttural growl answered the vampire's cry. He wasn't the only creature hunting in the night anymore. Each night, as darkness crept over the village, the people huddled together, praying the vampire wouldn't find its way to their doors. But strangely, it never crossed into the village again, not like it used to, not since Ethan vanished. And so the whispers began. Why has it stopped? Who is fighting it? What are those sounds we hear at night? They tried sending hunters into the woods, but the forest gave them nothing. Only claw marks carved deep into trees, shattered limbs of bark, and the stench of blood, and something burnt in the air, like scorched shadows. Some believed it was the work of a spirit. Others said the vampire had found rivals among the dark things of the forest. But none of them knew the truth. Ethan was still out there, alive, barely human, fighting night after night to keep evil at bay. By day, he slept deep within the mountains, in cold, damp caves, far from sunlight. He trained his body, sharpened his senses, forced himself to master the hunger inside. By night, he moved through the woods like a phantom, his faintly glowing eyes watching, waiting. Every time the vampire appeared, Ethan met it with fury and fire. Their clashes were no longer battles, they were wars. But with each fight, something inside Ethan cracked a little more. The curse he bore was growing stronger. The beast inside him clawed at the edges of his sanity. Then came the night that almost broke him. After a savage fight, Ethan collapsed in the underbrush, blood seeping from a deep gash across his side. His breath came in ragged gasps. A warm trickle slid down his hand, his own blood, and with it came the hunger. It hit him like a storm, wild, furious, starving. He looked at his own arm. His lips parted. His fangs stretched forward, unbidden. Trembling, he clutched his head and roared into the night, trying to shake it off. I won't become like it. I won't. Dragging himself into the shadows, he vanished once more. He didn't sleep. He just watched. Always near the village. Always hidden. But something else was changing. The vampire wasn't just feeding anymore. It was hunting. Strategically. As if it were searching for something. Watching him. Testing him. And that's when the dreams began. Each night, Ethan saw strange flashes. Visions of fire and ruin, of a face he didn't recognize, of ancient symbols carved into black stone. And always, the vampire, whispering to him in a voice that echoed through bone and blood. You are mine, Ethan. You belong to the dark. He would wake screaming, clawing at the ground, drenched in cold sweat. This wasn't just a battle anymore. It was becoming personal. And then, one storm-soaked night, as thunder shattered the sky and lightning split the trees, Ethan stood on the edge of the cliff overlooking Shadow Hill. His hands were slick with blood. His breath was ragged. His eyes stared into the abyss. Behind him, something moved. The vampire was no longer alone. The wind howled that night, carrying with it the sharp scent of death. Rain fell in heavy sheets, drenching the trees and soaking the earth in cold silence. Thunder crashed above Shadow Hill, But even the storm couldn't drown out the low, chilling growl that echoed from the forest. Ethan stood motionless at the cliff's edge, his crimson eyes scanning the darkness below. Something had changed. The vampire's presence felt different, thicker, more menacing. But that wasn't what disturbed him the most. It was the second presence. He wasn't imagining it. For weeks now, something else had been watching. Another creature. Not as old as the vampire, but faster, wilder. And tonight it had come closer than ever. Without a second thought, Ethan stepped back from the cliff, vanishing into the trees like a wraith. If the village was in danger again, he had no time to hesitate. Back in the village, fear had started to give way to confusion. The villagers couldn't explain it. People weren't dying as they had before. There were still attacks, but they felt different. Survivors spoke of flashes of red eyes. Not of evil, but something protective. Something familiar. Some even began to speak in hushed tones of a forest guardian. Maybe a spirit is fighting for us. Maybe the gods heard our prayers. But the elders weren't convinced. They remembered the night Ethan vanished. They remembered how he had fought with fire in his eyes. They remembered his body was never found. One night, an old hunter, Henry, whispered to the village chief, "What if it's not a spirit protecting us? What if it's him? Ethan?" He went into that forest with a blade, and the demon never killed him. Think about it. The chief fell silent, but the thought festered in his mind. Meanwhile, deep within the forest, Ethan crouched low in a clearing, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel them both now, the vampire and the other. And then, they emerged. First, the vampire stepped out of the fog. It was taller, more skeletal than before, its body now covered in black, hardened skin, almost like armor. It had evolved. Ethan's blood had changed it too. Then, from the other side of the clearing, a second figure appeared. Not human, not vampire. Its eyes glowed white, and its limbs twisted unnaturally. It crawled on all fours, sniffing the air, then let out a low, guttural growl, directed at both Ethan and the vampire. Ethan's breath hitched. "It's not one of us," he whispered. The vampire turned toward the creature, and to Ethan's shock, it didn't attack. Instead, it hissed something in a language older than time itself. The creature nodded. They were working together. That night, Ethan didn't just fight. He ran. For the first time in a year, fear overtook him. Whatever that second creature was, it wasn't born from darkness, it was created. Like him. Twisted. Half human. Half monster. A weapon. Barely escaping, he limped back to his hidden cave, claw marks raking across his chest, poison burning in his veins. Lying in the darkness, staring at the flickering torchlight, he whispered to himself, "It's starting. They're coming. And this time, I can't do it alone." Outside, the storm had passed, but the sky remained blood-red, and the village slept, unaware that their final protector was bleeding in the woods, while their greatest enemy had just gained an ally. The wound across Ethan's chest wouldn't stop burning. It wasn't just pain, it felt like fire beneath his skin. The claws of the second creature had done something different. The poison ran through his veins like wildfire, mixing with the vampire's curse already inside him. He groaned in the darkness of the cave, clutching his ribs, sweat pouring down his body. The torchlight flickered and faded. He was alone, shaking, fighting a war inside himself. And then, it happened. For the first time, he lost control. His eyes turned pitch black. His fingers morphed into claws. His breathing became animalistic, wild. And in that terrifying moment, he tore apart the stone wall beside him with a scream that echoed through the forest. Somewhere in the village, dogs howled. Birds scattered from trees. The forest went silent. And in that silence, the vampire smiled. Could feel Ethan slipping. The line between protector and predator was getting thinner. The vampire didn't need to kill the boy. It just had to make him forget who he was. For the next 3 nights, Ethan didn't go to the forest. He didn't protect the village. He stayed hidden, chained himself deep underground with rusted iron and stone bindings. He fought the beast inside him, screaming into the earth, resisting the whispers crawling through his mind. Why protect them? They'd never accept you now. You are one of us. You tasted power. You felt it. Let go. But he remembered his mother's voice, his sister's laugh, his father's stories. He remembered what it meant to be human, and that thin thread of memory held him together like a rope over a pit. By the fourth night, Ethan stood once again on the cliff, watching the smoke rise from the village chimneys below, his eyes still red but calm, focused. A single tear ran down his cheek. "I have to end this," he whispered, "before I lose everything." But while Ethan battled his inner demons, the vampire had not been idle. It was preparing. The second creature, now revealed to be a hybrid, like Ethan, but completely corrupted, was only the beginning. Somewhere deep in the forest, near the old burial grounds, the vampire stood before 6 large stones carved with symbols of blood and death. And beneath those stones, something began to wake. The vampire raised its hand, revealing a pendant, Ethan's blood crystal, stolen during their first battle. It dripped crimson, pulsing with cursed energy. "He thinks he's in control," the vampire hissed. "But I created him, and soon, the village won't fear me. They'll fear him." Back in the village, the chief met with the elders in secret. "We have to find out who or what is fighting the creature," the chief said. "If it's a spirit, we must honor it. And if it's not, then we prepare for war." And so they sent scouts into the forest again. This time, not to hunt the vampire, but to uncover the truth. They had no idea what they were walking into. That night, as the full moon bathed the world in pale light, Ethan returned to the edge of the village forest, heart heavy, senses on high alert. He smelled something new, humans. No, they shouldn't be here. He raced through the trees, his feet silent, his eyes scanning, until he saw them. 3 young men from the village, swords drawn, torches lit, standing exactly where the vampire had been summoning dark forces. Too late. The wind shifted. The fog thickened. A shriek tore through the sky. A shadow dropped from the trees, and one of the scouts screamed. Ethan leapt forward with inhuman speed, claws out, fangs exposed, tackling the creature to the ground. The other villagers turned just in time to see it. A red-eyed monster fighting off the beast that tried to kill them. They didn't recognize him. They only saw the fangs, the claws, the rage. "It's another one of them," one screamed. Ethan froze, and in that moment of hesitation he was stabbed. One of the scouts had struck him with a silver-tipped spear, not out of malice, but fear. Ethan dropped to his knees, growling through the pain. The second creature fled into the darkness, and the villagers stared horrified. Ethan looked up, his face partly human, partly demon. "I was trying to help," he whispered, and then he vanished into the trees before they could say a word. That night, the village had its answer. Their protector was not a spirit. He was something else. Ao staggered through the trees, clutching his side, the silver wound burning like fire. The scout hadn't meant to hurt him. Ao saw it in his eyes. It wasn't hate. It was fear, confusion, a moment of panic in a world that no longer made sense. Still, the pain cut deeper than the blade ever could. Not just because of the wound, but because for the first time in a year, he had looked directly into the eyes of his people. And they didn't recognize him. Back in the village, the 3 scouts sat in silence around the fire. They didn't speak of heroism or victory. Only one thing lingered in their minds. "It saved us," one whispered. "It bled for us. It said it was trying to help." The chief listened carefully, heart heavy. He said nothing, but his gaze drifted toward the forest, as if silently thanking the shadows. He remembered Ao, the boy who used to carry firewood for his mother, who fixed the village gate without ever being asked, who smiled even when no one was looking. And now, a creature with his voice had protected them from death. Deep in the forest, Ao reached the cave where he'd hidden for months. He collapsed onto the cold stone floor, shaking, chest heaving. Rain trickled in through cracks above, mixing with the blood trailing down his side. His breath was ragged, but his mind wouldn't rest. Memories flooded in, his mother's soft songs, his father's stories around the fire, his sister's laughter echoing through the courtyard. He missed them. He missed himself. The monster in his blood whispered, "Let it go. Become what you are." But Ao gritted his teeth, clutching a pendant he had carried since before the curse. A simple wooden carving, shaped like a lion. His sister had made it for him the year before the attacks began. He held it close to his chest. "No," he whispered. "I still remember who I am." For the first time in weeks, he didn't fight that night. He just watched. He sat at the edge of the forest, high in the trees, barely breathing, his red eyes hidden behind leaves. And from that quiet place, he saw the village. Lanterns flickering in windows, a mother singing her child to sleep, a young boy carrying water to his father. He smiled, just a little. This was why he fought. This was why he endured the hunger, the pain, the silence. Because somewhere deep down, beyond the demon's whisper, his heart still beat for them. The vampire returned that night, but not to kill. It stood at the border of the forest, staring toward the village, sensing the shift in power. "He's stronger," it hissed, "but still weak where it matters most. The heart." It vanished into the wind, whispering secrets to the dark. And as the stars scattered across the sky, Ao spoke softly to the night. "One day, they'll know it was me. But until then, I'll protect them from the shadows." The next evening, the village gathered at the square. They lit a fire, not for celebration, but for remembrance. It had been 1 year since Ethan vanished into the forest. No one spoke his name aloud, but his memory lingered in every glance, every whisper, every flicker of flame. His younger sister, Lily, stepped forward with trembling hands and placed a carved wooden lion at the base of the fire. She had made another one, just like the one he always wore. "Wherever you are," she whispered, "I hope you remember us. I hope you remember you." Her voice cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. Behind her, the chief lowered his head, eyes closed. Somewhere in the trees, hidden high in the shadows, Ethan watched. His claws gripped the branch tight, but his body didn't move. He saw his sister, heard her voice, smelled the salt of her tears on the wind. He reached slowly into his tunic and pulled out the old, worn carving, the one she gave him before the curse. He held it tight. His lips moved, though no sound escaped. "Lily, I remember. I never forgot." But he couldn't go to her. Not yet. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. His breath stilled. From across the forest, just beyond the cliff's edge, a low howl rose into the sky. Not the vampire. Not the corrupted beast. Something else. Something ancient. Ethan stood, heart pounding. He tucked the carving into his chest, eyes blazing with fire, and whispered to the night, "It's starting. Whatever it is, it's no longer just about me." And without another word, he vanished into the dark. The fire crackled in the village below. Lily looked up, as if she felt something, like someone was watching, someone who still cared. The next evening, the village gathered at the square. They lit a fire, not for celebration, but for remembrance. It had been 1 year since Ethan vanished into the forest. No one spoke his name aloud, but his memory lingered in every glance, every whisper, every flicker of flame. His younger sister, Lily, stepped forward with trembling hands and placed a carved wooden lion at the base of the fire. She had made another one, just like the one he always wore. "Wherever you are," she whispered, "I hope you remember us. I hope you remember you." Her voice cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. Behind her, the chief lowered his head, eyes closed. Somewhere in the trees, hidden high in the shadows, Ethan watched. His claws gripped the branch tight, but his body didn't move. He saw his sister, heard her voice, smelled the salt of her tears on the wind. He reached slowly into his tunic and pulled out the old, worn carving, the one she gave him before the curse. He held it tight. His lips moved, though no sound escaped. Lily, I remember. I never forgot. But he couldn't go to her. Not yet. Suddenly his eyes narrowed. His breath stilled. From across the forest, just beyond the cliff's edge, a low howl rose into the sky. Not the vampire. Not the corrupted beast. Something else. Something ancient. Ethan stood, heart pounding. He tucked the carving into his chest, eyes blazing with fire, and whispered to the night. It's starting. Whatever it is. It's no longer just about me. And without another word, he vanished into the dark. The fire crackled in the village below. Lily looked up, as if she felt something. Like someone was watching. Someone who still cared. The moon was full again. But this time, it wasn't the gentle silver of a regular cycle. It was blood red, casting an eerie glow over the forest. It wasn't a natural moonrise. It was a curse, a signal, a sign. Ethan crouched on the cliff's edge, gazing at the red sky, the wind biting at his skin. His senses were alive, but something else stirred deep within him. A call. He could feel the pull of it in his bones. The vampire had awakened something ancient, something older than both of them. He knew it in his soul. The battle had changed. It's too late to stop it now, Ethan whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. For weeks he had fought his own demons, quite literally. The hunger, the darkness inside him. But now it wasn't just about controlling the beast within. It was about saving the only place he'd ever called home. Meanwhile, in the village below, confusion and fear had spread like wildfire. The elders met under the cover of darkness, their faces drawn tight with concern. The blood moon has risen early, said the village chief, his voice grave. This is no natural occurrence. Something is coming. But what? Asked one elder. We've dealt with the vampire. We've seen the protector. But he's changed, the chief interrupted. Something inside him. It's growing. In the distance, the howl echoed again. This time louder. Lily, Ethan's sister, stood at the edge of the gathering, her heart pounding. She could sense it too. Brother? She whispered into the night, her voice trembling with hope and fear. Where are you? Please, come home. Ethan moved swiftly through the trees, his limbs no longer fully human, no longer fully demon. Every night he battled to keep the darkness at bay, but the call of the moon was getting stronger, drowning out his resistance. But tonight was different. The forest around him was unusually quiet. The animals had gone silent. Even the wind had stopped. It was as if the very world was holding its breath. A shadow passed overhead, darker than the night. He looked up. The vampire stood atop a high tree branch, its silhouette stark against the blood-red sky, its eyes glowing brighter than ever. You feel it too, don't you? The vampire's voice echoed, a deep, resonating whisper that shook the ground beneath Ethan. The awakening has begun, and with it, the true war. Ethan clenched his fists. You've been planning this all along. The vampire smiled. We were never enemies, Ethan. We are two halves of the same. Ethan growled low, his claws digging into the tree bark. No, I'm not like you. The vampire tilted its head. Not yet. Back in the village, fear had turned to action. The villagers gathered weapons. Axes, knives, whatever they could find. But there was no clear direction. No clear leader. We need Ethan, Lily cried out, her voice desperate. He's the only one who can save us now. The chief hesitated, looking out toward the forest. His eyes flickered with a painful truth. If he's still the Ethan we knew, then yes, he is our only hope. But if he is lost, Lily stepped forward, her voice breaking through the tension. He's not lost. I believe in him. We have to find him. She turned toward the forest, a fierce determination burning in her heart. She couldn't live in fear any longer. She couldn't wait for Ethan to save them. She would find him. Ethan's eyes burned with fury as the vampire stepped closer, the distance between them closing like a death sentence. You've come far, the vampire whispered, stepping out of the shadows. But you still haven't realized the truth, have you? Ethan's fangs flashed as he took a step forward, every muscle in his body poised for the fight that was coming. The truth is, the vampire continued, you and I are bound by blood. You will always be mine. And soon, the blood moon will complete the curse. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as the vampire raised its hand, sending a surge of dark power into the air. From the distance, a scream echoed through the forest. It was Lily. Ethan's heart stopped. He knew that voice. Without another thought, he turned and dashed toward the village, his blood pounding in his ears. Lily! He shouted, his voice raw. Stay away from the forest. But the vampire was already a step ahead. As Ethan reached the village's outskirts, he saw the shadow of the vampire's second creature, the corrupted hybrid, moving toward Lily. She stood alone, facing the beast, her hands shaking as she held a small blade in front of her. Get away from her! Ethan shouted, his voice a roar. The creature stopped in its tracks, turning slowly to face him. The tension in the air was unbearable, thick with the weight of the impending clash. Lily turned, her eyes wide with fear. Ethan, she whispered, as tears welled up in her eyes. You're here. But in that moment, Ethan felt something darker. A shift in the air, a pull in his blood. The blood moon was complete. The power coursing through him was stronger than ever before. He could feel the hunger rising. He had one choice, to fight for his family, or to let the beast consume him. Ethan stood at the edge of the village, the blood moon casting fire across the sky. Lily was just a few steps away, her eyes filled with both relief and fear. The corrupted creature growled, backing away for a moment, as if unsure which monster to fear more, Ethan or the demon that made him. Ethan could feel everything, his sister's heartbeat, the scent of her fear, the blood rushing beneath her skin. The beast inside him surged forward. She's weak, it whispered. She's just a heartbeat away. Take it and be free. Ethan dropped to one knee, his claws tearing into the earth as he fought the hunger. His breath came in ragged gasps, his eyes flickering between red and human brown. No, not her, not Lily, he choked. He looked up at her, his vision blurred, but even through the haze her face was clear, tears in her eyes, a trembling smile. Ethan, I knew you were alive, she said gently, taking a small step toward him. Stay back, he shouted, the voice not entirely his own. I can't control it. I don't want to hurt you. But she didn't move. She dropped the knife, and slowly, bravely, she placed her hand over her heart. Then don't fight it for me, she said. Fight it for you, for who you used to be. The corrupted creature lunged. In a blink, Ethan moved, faster than he ever had before. He collided with the monster midair, a shockwave of force ripping through the trees. The beast snarled, its claws slashing wildly, but Ethan held it down, growling through clenched teeth as the bloodlust clawed at his mind. He was winning, but only barely. In the back of his mind, the vampire laughed. Watching, waiting. Sooner or later, Ethan, you'll break. But in that moment, Ethan roared and drove his claws through the corrupted creature's heart, ending its existence in one final breath. The beast inside Ethan screamed in hunger, but he resisted. He turned away from the blood. He dropped to the ground, gasping, shaking violently. Lily ran to him, kneeling beside him, wrapping her arms around her brother. Not the monster, but the man still fighting inside. You came back, she whispered. I never left, he said, voice cracking. Then silence. Too much silence. The air shifted again, and for the first time, Ethan looked toward the mountain beyond the forest. The blood moon had triggered something ancient. A rumble echoed beneath the earth. The vampire's voice drifted on the wind. The real war begins now, Guardian. You've bought them time, but the curse runs deeper than you think. And the ones who created it are waking up. Ethan rose slowly, the beast still trembling inside him, but his eyes now clear, burning with a new purpose. "Let them wake," he said. "This time, I'll be ready." Days passed. The corrupted creature was gone, but its death left a scar, a warning. The village could feel it in the air. The birds didn't sing. The wind blew colder than it should. A storm was coming. One not made of rain or thunder, but of ancient blood. Ethan had vanished into the forest once again, but not out of fear. This time he was searching for answers. Deep beyond the hunting paths, beyond the river where the sun barely reached, was a place the elders once called Olajimera Scar, a forgotten part of the land, blackened by time. There, in the heart of the earth, beneath twisted roots and ash-covered stone, Ethan found it, the Temple of Fangs. It wasn't built by humans. The carvings told a story, not with words, but with images burned into obsidian walls. He saw the first vampire, not the one he fought, but the origin born of a blood pact between a dying king and a god of shadows. In desperation, the king had offered his soul to protect his people. But the god twisted his wish. He turned the king into a creature that could never die, and one that fed only on those he once swore to protect. "It always begins with good intentions," Ethan whispered, "but ends in darkness." He saw another carving, a figure with claws and wings, not fully beast, not fully man. Just like him, it was labeled with a single ancient mark. The first guardian. Back in the village, Lily sat with the chief, reading old scrolls the elders never dared to open. "The blood moon wasn't meant for death," she said quietly. "It was meant to awaken guardians, protectors, cursed with power to stop the rise of ancient evil." The chief looked up, eyes wide. "Then Ethan." "He's not a monster," Lily said. "He's the answer." In the temple, Ethan trained alone, fighting shadows that rose from the stone, created by the temple's magic to test his will. Each time he defeated one, it returned stronger. Each time he fell, it left him closer to the edge of losing control. But with every breath, every battle, he learned, not just how to fight, but how to feel the hunger without giving in to it, to embrace his curse without letting it consume him. "You are not just man or demon," the temple's voice echoed in his mind. "You are both, and that is your power." One night, as the wind howled through the trees, the vampire returned to the village. Not to fight, but to warn. It appeared at the gates, its eyes dull, its body wounded. "They are waking," it whispered. "Not just one. All of them. The ones who cursed the bloodline. The ancient gods of hunger. They're coming back." The villagers backed away, afraid. But the chief raised a hand. "Why tell us this?" he asked. "Why help us now?" The vampire's eyes turned toward the mountain. "Because they do not care for vampires or humans. To them, we are all prey." Far from the village, in the deepest cavern of the temple, Ethan knelt before a pool of silver blood, the memory of the first guardian. The temple whispered one final truth. To win the war, you must become more than cursed. You must become chosen. Drink, and be remade. Ethan stared at the blood, heart pounding. The choice stood before him. Drink and risk losing the last of his humanity, or refuse and face the ancient gods unprepared. He closed his eyes. He saw Lily's face, his people's fire, the village gates he used to guard as a boy. "I will not lose myself," he whispered. Then he drank. The blood seared through him like wildfire, screaming through his veins, burning the demon and the man into something new. He collapsed, his body still. Then his eyes opened, and they were no longer red. They were silver. The village slept under a dark sky, unaware of the shift happening within their protector. Ethan stood at the edge of the forest, his mind still reeling from the transformation. The blood had flowed through him like fire, reshaping him, changing him. He wasn't sure what he had become, but he knew one thing. He was no longer just human or demon. He had become something else, a guardian born of the blood moon, forged in shadow and fire. The power surged through him, but it felt different now, controlled. He glanced down at his hands, the claws no longer as monstrous. His reflection in the dark pool of water at his feet showed silver eyes, cold, yet filled with clarity. "Ethan," a voice whispered. It was Lily, the sound of her voice reaching him through the wind, filled with hope and fear. "Ethan, please, come back." He had not returned to her since that night. His sister had been left in the dark, waiting for her brother, but he wasn't sure if he could face her yet. The weight of his transformation hung over him, a reminder that everything had changed. The village woke to a new kind of dawn, one that was clouded by dread. It started with the ground trembling, a low rumble beneath their feet, as if the earth itself was waking up. The sky turned an unnatural shade of crimson, reflecting the blood moon's curse. And then, they came. A cold wind swept through the trees, and from the depths of the forest, shadows took shape, dark, humanoid forms with burning eyes. The first wave of the ancient gods had arrived. The villagers screamed in panic as the creatures descended from the mountain. Their bodies were made of shadows, their faces twisted with hunger. Lily stood at the village gate, looking out into the storm of darkness. "Ethan, where are you?" she whispered, clutching a small knife in her trembling hands. And then, a shadow passed behind her, standing tall, its presence both terrifying and familiar. "I'm here," Ethan said. He stepped forward, his eyes glowing silver, his movements silent like a predator in the night. The villagers fell silent, eyes wide with awe and fear. Ethan wasn't the same boy they had known. He was something more, yet still their protector. "Ethan?" Lily's voice cracked as she stepped forward. "Is that really you?" He nodded, but there was an unsettling distance in his eyes, as if the boy she once knew was still hidden beneath something much darker. "I'm still here, Lily," he said softly, "but I'm no longer the same." She hesitated, but her heart knew the truth. This was her brother, the same strength, the same courage, but with more power, far more than before. The creatures began to move toward them, their presence like a shadow draped over the village. They were coming in waves, dark, twisted beings that slithered through the trees and crawled from the earth. Ethan's claws flexed as he stepped forward, his silver eyes locked on the first creature in line. He could feel the hunger in the air, the pull of their dark power. But he resisted. "I won't let them win," Ethan muttered under his breath. Without another word, he sprang forward, a blur of motion. He fought like a storm, his claws slicing through the air, his body moving with terrifying speed. The creatures tried to fight back, but they were nothing compared to the force of a true guardian reborn. Each strike Ethan made seemed to weaken them, the creatures disintegrating into ash with every blow. But for every creature he killed, more emerged from the shadows. They would not stop. "There's too many of them," Lily cried, watching helplessly as the creatures flooded into the village. Ethan stopped for a moment, his eyes locking with hers. There was a sadness in his gaze, a deep sorrow. "I have to finish this," he said, his voice firm. He turned toward the mountain, where the first creatures had emerged from the darkness. "They're not just gods of shadows," Ethan said. "They're ancient beings, born from the curse that first created the vampire. And now they've come to claim what's theirs." Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had never seen her brother so broken, so determined, but lost. "Ethan, we can fight them together," she said. "You're not alone. You never were." He glanced at her once more. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, but it faded just as quickly. "No, Lily, the battle is mine now. It always was." Suddenly, a deep rumble shook the ground, and the sky cracked open with purple lightning. The first of the ancient gods appeared, larger than any shadow, a monstrous figure made of pure dark energy. Ethan stepped forward, his eyes blazing, claws extended, ready for the ultimate fight. "You think you can stop us?" the god's voice boomed. "You are a child, a half-blood." Ethan stood tall, his voice calm yet fierce. "I don't need to be whole to fight for what matters." He lunged at the god, his body moving like lightning. But this enemy was different. This wasn't just a shadow. This was a creature older than time itself. It struck with power, sending Ethan flying through the air. Lily screamed, but before she could reach him, Ethan stood once again, his body surging with dark energy, his silver eyes burning like fire. "I will not be your prey," Ethan hissed. The battle had only just begun. The ancient gods were rising, and now Ethan would have to face the one truth he had feared. The true test of his power would come not in the form of monsters or creatures, but in the form of the gods themselves. The ground shook beneath their feet, the village trembling as though it were about to split open. Ao stood alone before the ancient god, its towering figure made of living shadow, an embodiment of primal darkness. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly fire, and its voice echoed like a distant thunderclap. "You are the last of your kind," the god rumbled, its voice like a storm crashing through the heavens. "The guardians are long dead. Your bloodline has fallen." But Ao didn't flinch. He had no time for fear. "I am not the last," he replied, his voice cold and steady. "And I will not fall." A deep growl escaped from Ao's throat as he lunged forward, claws outstretched, his silver eyes burning with the fury of the storm. The shadow god struck back, its immense size sending shockwaves through the earth. But Ao moved like lightning, faster than the gods had expected. With every strike, the shadow god seemed to bleed pure darkness, an ancient energy more twisted than anything Ao had ever felt before. The air around them thickened with each blow, suffocating and oppressive, as if the very atmosphere sought to crush him. "You cannot defeat what is eternal," the god hissed, its eyes glowing brighter, its form expanding, filling the sky with suffocating shadows. Ao gritted his teeth, but the pain of fighting this being was more than physical. It was as if every strike he made, every blow he took, was cutting into the very core of his being. He was fighting something far beyond the scope of man. This was a god, and gods were not meant to be killed by mere mortals. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she finished reading. The true war was much older than the villagers could have known. The vampire had not just been a random creature of the night. It was the key to a curse that threatened not only their village but the world itself. The god before Ethan was just one of many, the first of the ancient gods, born from the twisted pact of a king long dead. And there were more, much more. Back in the village, the shadows grew longer, the darkness thicker. Ethan was slowing, his body bruised, battered, but his resolve unbroken. The god before him was more powerful than anything he had ever faced. But Ethan knew something now. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting to end it all. With a scream, Ethan surged forward, his claws slashing through the god's shadowed body, his silver eyes glowing brighter than ever. The god's form writhed, twisting and cracking under the force of his blows, but it was far from done. "You cannot defeat me, child," the god hissed, its voice now a guttural growl. "I am the first of many. We are the darkness, and darkness cannot die." Ethan's heart pounded. The air seemed to freeze around him as he remembered the ancient scroll, the curse, the pact. His bloodline was the key. The curse had to be broken. He lunged again, but this time he struck deeper into the heart of the god. "I will end this. I will end you," Ethan growled, his voice laced with a fury that only a guardian could hold. The silver in his eyes flared brightly. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the shadow god exploded into 1,000 fragments, burning away into the air like dust, leaving nothing but smoke and the echo of its voice fading. Ethan stood, breathing heavily, his body trembling. But he had won. For now. But the war had only begun. As the last remnants of the god's shadow faded, Ethan looked toward the mountain, where the other ancient gods were stirring, awakening from their slumber. He could feel them. They were coming. "This isn't over," he whispered, his eyes filled with cold fire. And as the first rays of dawn broke through the sky, Ethan knew that the battle for the world had only just begun. The sky was streaked with blood-red clouds, and the village lay in an eerie silence. The battle had raged for days, the once peaceful hills now a battleground for survival. Ethan stood at the edge of the cliff, his body bruised, his silver eyes dimming, but his spirit unwavering. He had fought through countless demons, ancient gods born from the shadows, twisted by the bloodline of the vampire king. One by one, he had struck them down, his claws cutting through their darkness like a knife through cloth. But this last fight, the final god, was different. The ground beneath him trembled as the last of the gods rose, taller than all the others, its form shifting between light and shadow. Its eyes glowed like twin suns, burning with rage. "You cannot defeat us, mortal," the god's voice rumbled, shaking the very air. "We are eternal. We are the darkness that lives in every heart." Ethan stood tall, despite the exhaustion weighing down on him. His breath came in shallow gasps, the hunger within him clawing at the edges of his mind. But he had learned to control it, to fight the beast within him. Tonight he would face it one last time. "You may be eternal," Ethan said, his voice steady, "but I am not afraid of death." With a scream, Ethan charged forward, his claws extended, his silver eyes flashing with fire. He clashed with the god, their bodies colliding with a force that shook the mountains. For a moment, it seemed as if the earth itself would split open, but Ethan pressed on. He fought with every ounce of strength he had left, his body a blur of motion, his spirit a storm of fury and pain. He felt the beast within him trying to break free, urging him to kill, to feed, but Ethan fought against it. His heart, his soul, remained focused on one thing only: to save his people. The god struck him down, sending Ethan crashing to the ground. He coughed up blood, but the fight was far from over. "You are nothing but a child of shadows," the god taunted. "Your sacrifice means nothing." Ethan's eyes burned with fury. He pulled himself to his feet, his muscles screaming in protest, but he stood tall, determined. "It means everything," Ethan whispered. With the last of his strength, Ethan lunged at the god, his claws tearing through its form. The god shrieked in pain, but Ethan didn't stop. He fought harder, the very air around him crackling with energy. Finally, with a single final blow, Ethan struck at the heart of the god. The creature exploded into nothingness, its body disintegrating into ash and darkness. And as the last remnants of its being vanished, the ground beneath Ethan trembled and cracked. But it wasn't over. As the final god fell, Ethan felt his own strength fading. He staggered back, his body trembling. The fight had taken everything, more than he had ever imagined. He fell to his knees, his breathing shallow and labored. The villagers, hidden in the distance, had watched the battle unfold. They saw the darkness lift, but they also saw their protector, their hero, collapsing to the earth. Ethan raised his head, his silver eyes looking toward the village. A faint smile touched his lips. "I've done it," he whispered, barely audible. "You're safe." And then, as the first light of dawn broke through the horizon, Ethan's body finally gave way. The curse of the bloodline, the toll of the battles, the weight of his sacrifice. All of it had taken its final toll. Ethan, the half-demon protector, was gone. The villagers found him the next morning, lying in the place where he had fallen, his body still and cold. The once proud protector of their home, the guardian who had given everything for their survival, now lay at peace. Lily was the first to reach him, her heart breaking as she knelt beside him. She could hardly believe it. He had been so strong, so fierce, yet now he was gone. Her brother, her protector. "Ethan," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. You saved us." The villagers gathered around, their faces filled with grief and reverence. Ethan had given everything for them, for the village he had sworn to protect. He had saved them all, but at the cost of his life. In the weeks that followed, the village mourned. They honored Ethan with a great feast, celebrating his life and sacrifice. They built a statue in his likeness, a memorial at the village gate, so that no one would ever forget the boy who became a guardian, the man who fought through shadows to protect his people. And every year, as the blood moon rose high in the sky, the villagers would gather to remember him. They would light candles, sing songs, and tell stories of Ethan's bravery and sacrifice. They would honor the last guardian of Shadow Hill, who had given everything to protect them. Lily, though grieving, found comfort in knowing that her brother's spirit would never fade. His courage, his love for his people, would live on in every story told. He wasn't just a protector, Lily whispered to the children one night. He was a hero, and heroes never truly die. They live on in the hearts of those they protect.